Hey, what's up, guys? So, in this video, I'm basically going to start a series where I'm going to talk about how I'm improving my life, building good habits, accomplishing goals, all those kinds of things to hopefully inspire you guys to do the same and to give you ideas and to learn from my mistakes. And that's the most important part because generally, when you see self improvement advice, it is from the frame of an expert, of a cult leader almost, right? Of a guru is teaching you how to get your life together. And there's this aura of unattainability. They have just completely, it's hard to relate to them, right? It's hard to relate to these experts and to understand the process they went through to attain the success that they have. So you see them at the end goal. It's like watching a professional basketball player, watching LeBron James, and you see him playing. How could I ever do that? Is what you're going to think. Like, how the fuck could I ever do anything like that? And you don't see his first time that he played basketball and fumbled and failed and messed up. And so when it comes to dating, I am an expert. I've done thousands of approaches, had tons of success, dated models, all that garbage. I don't know why I call it garbage, but all that stuff, you know? And when it comes to self-improvement in other areas, I'm not necessarily an expert. So my physique is not very good right now. I'm making progress, but overall I'm not in great shape, and that's something I want to improve. My self-discipline is not where it could be. I've built my own business, and I've gotten to a point where I can make six figures just working 10 hours a week or so to maintain that. But I could do a lot more. I could be a lot more successful. I could be a lot more disciplined. I could give up a lot of negative habits. There's so many things that I could improve. And what I want to do in this series is show myself trying different ideas, different experiments to build good habits and to improve the things that I need to improve. And my mindset going into that and track these successes and failures. That's the basic idea, to give you something that's relatable as opposed to something that is, oh, look at Tony Robbins, this, expert. So it's seeing the process. It's watching the process from someone who has not mastered this. And let me explain. Like, I'll talk about my flaws openly. I don't want to come across as talking from some, above you kind of perspective. So my biggest flaws are not being completely in control of my diet, having gained weight, weighing about 200 pounds, which is overweight. It's not obese, but it's overweight. That's one that I have had trouble. I'll try a diet, but I can't stick to it. I'll try the keto diet, can't stick to it. Try this, can't stick to it. I've been going to the gym fairly consistently for the last month or so. So that's starting to improve. My diet overall has improved. But what happens is once every 3 or 4 nights, usually sometimes less, but I'll drink. And the night when I drink, I end up binge eating. I'll order like Taco Bell or something at 2 a.m. And then the next day, I go into a downward spiral where I just want to watch YouTube all day. I feel frustrated with myself for, having binge eat, and then it gets worse. And then the next day goes downhill. Does that make sense? So the next day, I also binge eat and I watch too much YouTube. Sometimes I'll watch YouTube for 4 hours straight in my bed. I'll do that. Why? Because it's a habit, because it's appealing. I'll just watch stupid shit. I'll watch videos about things that I don't even care about. It's not like if it's useful content, that's one thing, but I'll just be in a state of avoidance, right? Avoidance, I think, is the word for, drinking is a way of avoiding stress. Watching YouTube, binge eating, it's ways of avoiding stress. And so I'm on this journey of figuring out how to eliminate those bad habits. And the bad habits for me are just eating shitty food sometimes, any drinking. It's not like I drink every day, but when I do drink, it affects everything else negatively, because drinking for my father was a huge issue. And so for me, even if I drink a little bit, it feels worse than it would for someone else, right? Because it makes me think of that. And then the third one is consuming content, watching stupid shit, watching the same Netflix show I've watched before. I have these bad habits. And my strategy for changing them that's been effective so far, that's gotten me on the right path so far, has been building micro habits, atomic habits. You can read the book by James Clear to get an idea of the strategy in depth and have it explained. But the basic idea is I have a list of, it's like 8 or 9 habits that are very easy that I do every day. So one is go to the gym for at least 1 minute. So some days I've had anxiety lately. For a long time, my anxiety just went away. I used to have panic disorder. I haven't had a panic attack in a long time. Right? I haven't had a panic attack in a long time, but I had a almost panic attack not that long ago. And then since then, my anxiety has been pretty bad. It's been enough that it's affecting my decisions, increasing my stress, and it's a problem. So I kind of forgot because I was reading comments, but great job losing 30 pounds. So what was I saying? So I've had my anxiety come back and my stress has been increased. And so that makes going to the gym difficult. For me, for whatever reason, the gym causes my anxiety. I have hypochondria specifically. My father died suddenly. And so I have this deep-seated subconscious fear that the same could happen to me. Right. So it's basically just doing something like working out increases your heart rate and you feel these physical sensations. For most people, it's normal. Your hands get redder, shit like that. Most people, that's like, whatever. But with the hypochondria, I start thinking, oh, what does that mean? Am I having a heart attack because my father died suddenly? I associate it to that. That's the basic idea. And so if I'm really stressed, going to the gym, if I'm feeling anxiety, I'll just go to the gym for at least a minute and then I'll leave. But usually what happens is I stay for 20 minutes or so. It's slowly getting longer and the anxiety has slowly gotten less. That's what I've noticed. By doing this micro habit strategy with the gym, my enjoyment of going to the gym has increased. I've had less anxiety. It's still there. It's still frustrating, but it's less. And some days it's barely even there. There's been a couple times I went to the gym recently where I didn't even really feel anxiety. So that was great. And that's because momentum is building. Because all I have to do is 1 minute. If I feel like shit, I can do 1 minute and leave. But then I say, I might as well keep going. So that's the strategy I'm implementing with everything. That's why I'm doing this live right now. One of my habits, at least do a minute of YouTube every day. Because I haven't been consistent with with my main channel lately. And so obviously my views fell off. I'm still making enough money, but it's going to keep going down. And I want to make more content. I want to be on the grind, right? So, consistent. So that's been working. I've been doing a video every minute. I've got like 5 or 6 videos ready to be edited and uploaded that are just sitting there because of this micro habit. Because I'm not going to usually do just 1 minute. After 1 minute, I'm like, might as well keep going, right? Even if I'm feeling stressed when I started. It's momentum, right? That's the power of momentum. So I have that. I have visualizing, which is something I don't believe in the woo-woo stuff, but I believe it does help you be more motivated and driven to achieve your goals. So I do some visualization, making sure I do some cleaning every day. You know, I'm naturally a very messy guy. And now my place is clean because I've just made this micro habit of doing a little cleaning every day. So it's things like that, right? I have this list of small positive habits, and I'm doing that instead of what I usually do, the trap that I usually fall into, which is extreme goals. I'm going to do an hour and a half of this. I'm going to finish this in 3 days. I'm going to post 3 YouTube videos a day. That's how my mind works. You know, it thinks I have a certain type of confidence, or you could call it arrogance, where I'm like, I can do anything and I can accomplish. So I'm not going to be a bitch. I'm not going to be a bitch and half-ass it. I'm going to do 3 videos a day. I'm going to finish this book right away. There was one point where I did 4 hours of working out every day for a month because I made a bet and it worked and I got into great shape that month. But then guess what happened after? The whole process of working out was so stressful that I quit, that I gave up. Good habits destroy approach anxiety. I'm curious what you mean by that. If you could elaborate. But that's the basic idea. That's building positive habits, micro habits, and then just knowing that I want to build them more, but I'm not pressuring myself too much. I'm not using too much force. I'm using momentum instead of force. Just give myself a little nudge in the right direction, 1 minute, and then let the momentum happen. Now, another thing I've noticed seems to be effective is the most productive I ever was. And this is a strategy. You guys can try this stuff and let me know in the comments over time how this works for you. But it is to have one main focus. So there was a period I just told myself I'm going to finish this book. It was the first book I ever wrote, totally unrelated to pickup, unrelated to self-improvement. It's about the simulation theory, actually. I wrote that book in 2 weeks. And that book, it's like 80 pages, not super long, but I also revised it 7 or 8 times. So I wrote it and rewrote 7 or 8 times. And I did that in 2 weeks. That took like 8 hours of writing a day. 8 hours of writing. Writing is hard. Writing is a very, it's hard to focus for hours and hours on something like writing. It's probably the most difficult thing in terms of creativity, like versus YouTube videos or versus, it's harder. So I did this 8 hours a day, finished this book in 2 weeks. And the reason I did it is I just had that one goal. That was the one thing I focused on. The problem was I had no other goals, nothing else I was focusing on. So I didn't market the book properly. I didn't, it didn't sell. I didn't know what I was doing, but I got it done very efficiently. So I'm also trying that. And I'm working on another book. I've just focused on that, and I've knocked out the first draft in several days. So it does seem to work. My concern, and this is what I'll talk about in the series, is like, but how do I make sure I don't neglect everything else and just let everything else slip off? That's where the habits come in. So what do you honestly think about paying for sex if you're a virgin? That's a tough one, man. I have nothing ethically against it necessarily. If it's legal, the problem is, I think it will, if you pay for sex, I think there's a certain lack of feeling of your own value going down. This feeling that, oh, I had to pay for it. I'm this piece of shit. And I feel like it might make it even harder to get laid in the future, but I don't know, because I haven't really been there, So that's my thought on paying for sex, but if you're a virgin. But the other thing is quitting the bad habits. And that's something that is more complicated, I think, quitting bad habits as opposed to building good ones. And if anyone has their own strategies that have worked for them, let me know. But my bad habits are drinking occasionally. When I drink, it's usually like 4 or 5 drinks. So it's enough to get fairly drunk. And any night I do that, everything goes downhill for the next couple of days. So drinking is a bad habit, a restraining habit, you could call it. Watching YouTube and Netflix just in a derp state, right? In a derp catatonic, I just don't want to do anything, avoiding life kind of state, as a way to avoid stress, right? I think a lot of people do it. Probably most people do it. And then the other bad habit, eating bad food. So how do I change these habits? One thing I've been doing is just making a rule. Where do I consume YouTube? I think, where do I do it? How do I change the environment? I usually do it in bed. It's something I do just like laying in bed. So how do I quit that habit? Just don't bring my laptop or phone with me to bed. I'm still allowed to watch YouTube. I'm still allowed to do any of these things. I'm not telling myself I have to control myself and I'm not allowed to do, but by doing that, then I have to actually get up and take positive action to watch YouTube or Netflix, and I'm less likely to do it. So far that seems to have worked pretty well. It's just sometimes I still bring it with me, right? But the more I develop that habit, that does seem to have been working. So that's something that seems promising as just a simple strategy. How can you change your environment to make a bad habit harder to do? With quitting drinking, with not drinking, I think I just have to not do it. The only time I'm tempted to drink is if I'm going out. So if that's difficult, I'll just go out less, right? Just not go out until that's no longer a concern or a habit, right? So that's the basic idea of this video series. I'll talk about the things I'm doing, the ideas I have when I have an epiphany, but I'm doing it I'm not an expert. I'm not in great shape. I don't have perfect discipline. I've still managed to make good money, not being very disciplined, only working 10 to 20 hours a week on average. But I know if I worked 40, 50 hours a week on my business, I'd already be a millionaire. Just mathematically, that's almost certainly the case, probably multi. And yet just because the lack of discipline, lack of consistency, that hasn't happened. So that's what I'm working on, getting to a point where I'm working 40, 50 hours a week, getting to a point where I'm not doing too much YouTube or Netflix, just watching, if it's with a girl on a date or if it's, with friends hanging out, a little bit of TV, it's fine. A little bit of video games is fine. But when it's like a 4-hour session, that's such a waste, right? It's funny in a way, once I quit my main job, it became harder for me to get myself to work because of the freedom, because my schedule is now so loose. So that's the thing when you're building a business, that's an online business, and you're at a point where you're making enough money to be sustainable. then it's very easy to tell you don't have any pressure, right? You don't have a boss, you don't have anyone forcing you to do anything. So that's the thing I'm working on getting around or getting over or whatever. When I built good habits like exercise, meditation, it gave me more confidence to approach girls. That's interesting. When your self-esteem, good morning, Mike. When your self-esteem is higher, it is easier to approach women. And if you have good habits, your self-esteem is going to get higher. So it makes sense to me that would help. The problem is some people use this as like an elaborate Wile E. Coyote thing where they say, well, once I have my habits all taken care of, then I'll start approaching. Once I'm in good shape, once I do this. And that's really just using that as an excuse to avoid doing the thing that you really don't want to do, because approaching women is really, it's harder emotionally at first than these other things. It's harder than meditating. It's harder than going to the gym. Not for me because my anxiety, but generally for most people, it's harder than any good habit you can think of that people try to build because there's the rejection aspect. So we'll tell ourselves, I'll build good habits and then I'll start approaching. That doesn't work. But if you are building good habits and approaching is one of them, it will be easier. The process will be easier. Your confidence will be higher. You'll just feel when you're talking to a girl, you'll feel more entitled, more deserving. You'll be like, I know I'm a guy. I'm on my purpose. I'm making progress. I'm improving myself, becoming the best version of myself on a daily basis, leveling up. And so I know that a girl has something to gain from being with me, from talking to me, that I have value to offer. You just give off this different energy. So I would say, yes, it is something everyone should do. Pick up in a vacuum. You can do pickup and still be a degenerate and not enjoy life at all. You can pick up a ton of hot girls and then have nothing together and it's not worthwhile. I know people like that. And that's definitely not what I want to teach when it comes to pickup. So that's why I do plan on making more content about things outside of pickup, not getting rid of the pickup aspect. I even got some new Ray-Ban hidden camera glasses that you can do first person infield with. So I'm still going to be doing infield and doing pickup content, but I want to do more of the outside of that stuff because pickup isn't everything. I want the channel to be about masculine excellence is one way to put it, right? And with pickup, I'm an expert, but with these other things, I'm not. And it's sharing my process of figuring these things out and learning and improving with other people, right? Being something where we're basically in it together as opposed to me just teaching you, right? Where I'm making mistakes, I'm learning, I'm figuring out, okay, why do I keep, binge eating? Why do I keep having these bad habits? Why do I keep falling off? Why do I keep giving up on this goal I set before I finish it? And figuring out how to change that. And so far, the thing that seems to be the most promising is micro habits. Is just, I have a spreadsheet. You could do this yourself. What are like 5 to 10, no more than that. You don't want to overwhelm yourself, but what are 5 to 10 positive habits that I want to build? Meditation is an obvious one. It could be working out, reading specifically, like reading something that's educational, right? About business, about self-improvement, psychology, something like that. Reading, building a side hustle, right? Going out to talk to women, whatever it is, a list, and then just making sure you do those things every day and let the momentum build over time. But it's just 1 minute per day. That's all you have to do. Or like read one page, the smallest possible thing, and then trust that momentum will build. That seems to be something that does not lead to burnout, that is consistent, that is reliable, that works. And then the question is, how do you make sure that you get to a point where you are doing enough, taking enough action where you will achieve your goals in a reasonable amount of time? And I think momentum is the main trick, right? The main thing to getting there is just trusting in momentum, not trying to force yourself, not trying to fight too much against your emotions, not stressing yourself out too much by pushing yourself to some crazy extent, but trusting the process that if you build the good habit, the results will come and that you will get into momentum and that you'll start to look forward to these things. Fiber, high volume. Okay, I'm open to that. Yeah, I think first person infields is a cool idea because it'll be like you're there, right? So you don't get to see certain things like the person, their body language, right? The person being filmed or the person doing the pickup, but you do get to see a different perspective, and it's like first person, what's happening, seeing the girls reaction from the guy's perspective. So I think that's cool. So that's the idea for the series. I'll give daily updates most likely. I meditate. Yes, meditation is definitely very beneficial. It's something everyone should do. And it's not necessarily about religion or spirituality. It's training your mind to focus, to concentrate, to not get too caught up in ideas and not to believe your own bullshit, to be able to have distance from your thoughts. That's why it's powerful. Okay, so that's the basic overview, right? And my goals for 2023, what would they be? Generally, my goals are to get by the end of the year, get to a point where I have a 6-pack, but still like 15-inch arms, right? Still strong, but have a 6-pack. That's by the end of the year. So there's plenty of time for that. To make at least $1 million, which might sound like a lot. It's more than I made last year, but if I do the math, if I work 40 hours a week, that won't even be that difficult. So it's ambitious, but it's not as crazy as it might sound. And then with dating is to, well, I don't know because it's like more self-improvement, so I can see this not being appropriate, but whatever, is to either one of two things, either sleep with 100 women or find a girl that I genuinely consider my dream girl and being in a relationship with that type of girl, right? But either of those two things. And that's basically my goals for the year. And my way of getting there is through these micro habits. And then I'll experiment with other things, but that's the foundation that I think is going to work. Really, Young Hundreds, so that's really cool. So you started with just approaching one girl a day. That was your goal. And that's, for a lot of people, that wouldn't even be a micro habit because that's hard for a lot of people. At first, I think a micro habit would be literally the micro habit for approaching could just be to go towards the venue, to at least start driving towards the venue for a minute. And that, if you've never approached, that alone is enough. And usually you're going to at least go to the venue when you start driving, but taking the pressure really off because approaching is hard for people. But it's crazy that you got to 20 approaches a day. That's it's pretty good progress. I'm curious how long that took. But I'm about to wrap up. If there's any last questions, I'll go ahead and answer them. If you have ideas for what I could do with this series to make it interesting and valuable to people watching, let me know. And other than that, I'll see you guys tomorrow. But if there's any last questions, let me know. Is there anything else I want to mention? I don't think so. Yeah, the first approach is the hardest. That's why I have a 30-day challenge in my course, The Spark. And I have a separate section for if you haven't approached any women in the last month. If you haven't done any approaches recently, how to get over that approach anxiety and finally do that first approach. It has a whole strategy for that because that is the biggest roadblock for a lot of guys who watch pickup, probably most. How long do you need to wait to see results with meditation? Depends on so many factors. So I don't know. You should see some noticeable differences within a month, I would say, just in your state of mind. But it depends how long you meditate, whether you use guided meditations. It depends on all kinds of things. All right. With that said, I'll see you guys tomorrow. It was good talking to you guys, and we'll see. Hopefully, what I want this to be is at first, there's some level of skepticism, people seeing if I'll actually accomplish these goals. But over time, seeing me get in better shape, seeing be put out more content on YouTube and get a bigger viewership and making more money, see everything go on an upward spiral. And then that will inspire other people who are struggling to see what it looked like when I'm struggling in some areas or not doing as much as I want to. I'm not happy with where I'm at in certain areas of life. And then seeing the process unfold, being able to see that from the beginning, having it on YouTube and seeing how that transformation takes place. That's what I want this series to be. It's like a before after fitness thing, but showing the whole road of getting there as well. Thanks, Mike. A month and a half is really not that long. That's really good to get to 20 approaches a day. That's good shit, man. But with that said, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.